not disembodied. This was Mrs. Bradshaw who was speaking through one of the mediums. And I said, you mean there's an invisible body attached? And she said, precisely. And then she said, would you like it to touch you? And I said, yes. So she said, well, ask it. So I said, hand, will you touch me? And so the hand went round behind me and it tapped me on the shoulder.
But could these hands have been hoaxed? This visitor who felt the truncated length of a disembodied arm didn't think so.
And I was so startled, I moved my hand and it traveled right up a sleeve. There was a sleeve, like a cotton sleeve, very much like this, right up to the shoulder, and then it just stopped. There was nothing beyond where the shoulder would have been. It was a really amazing experience.
Sometimes we would be touched by these hands. Sometimes we would invite them to touch us. Sometimes they would touch us on our knees, let's say, or on our feet, which, as it was a fraud-proof table, were inaccessible to the mediums themselves.
So what's it like to touch one of these spirit hands?
It felt cool, but not cold. It didn't feel clammy, it didn't feel slimy. It felt like a normal human hand, and they grasped my hand firmly.
The unseen communicators told the scientists that they usually materialize the hand.
Can I help you with it? Yeah, we saw you guys just moved in across the street. We wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. They're federal agents, we don't know that. I know why you're really here.
Who are you?
Y'all brought you to help you find a way. Gentlemen, this rating is going down. You're coming today, aren't you? You cannot remove these people by force. We know you're not stop! The more you push them, the more they think it is a test of their faith. Please stop! There are women and children in here! You come in here, guns blazing. This is war. I'm here to work this out with words, not bullets.
I never had a choice in any of it, all because of your dream.
Who do you call it's your government attacking? The whole world is going to hear my message. Everything I've done has been for you. Get out of my channel. Do you think people like this respond to this pressure? I want them out of there now. God spoke to them. Come out. If you want a place to see the history books, it's one of the saddest things the world's ever known. That's on you. Hey, it's John Leguizamo. Click below to subscribe to the Paramount Network channel on YouTube for more on Wake Up.
And or an arm, because it was easier than materializing a full body. But some cases of full bodies being materialized were reported.
I had the presence, the physical presence, my mother, my father, my sister, all in solid form, standing in front of me, all of whom I was able to hold, to embrace, and carry out conversations with them. I've witnessed it so many times, it just becomes a normal thing.
Normal is a word strained by the experiences of the Skull experiment. And there was nothing normal when patches of light floated over the scientists' heads and slowly changed into spectral forms.
The diffused patches of light would take the form just of a human face, moving round the room with the direct voice very, very faintly coming from the diffused patch of light, and the lips moving again very faintly. As I stared at the face, it was noticeably smaller than a normal size head. But within the face itself, features were clearly visible. We could see the glistening of the eyes, we could see the eyes moving.
And even more remarkable forms were to appear.
They look like angelic forms.
And I was very fortunate that one came and landed on my hand. And just the energy that you felt from it when it connected with you was a lovely experience, and it just felt like an overwhelming feeling of love.
These were great go in thinking none of this can be true, but after experience after experience after experience, it gradually dawns on you, hey, there's something going on here. We can't explain by normal scientific laws, but which nevertheless exists.
Years ago, I was staying in this very old inn, and I actually saw somebody come out from the wall, walk through, and just disappear again. And I just believe there are people that are trapped between here and the next world.
The experiments featured in this program have been described by the scientists who witnessed them as some of the best evidence for life after death ever. After 2 years of intense effort, the Skull experiment began to produce more phenomena than in any mediumship experiment in the history of the paranormal.
Their initial claims were that they were in contact with a group of deceased entities who were producing, with their help, a number of pictures of either deceased persons or strips of films, which they claimed to be produced without any cameras and in the dark.
To eliminate any possibility of hoaxing, the scientists brought their own film and locked it in a specially designed security box.
The box was held in the hands of the investigators so that no one could get at it. And then immediately afterwards, we would take it out of the box ourselves so that no one else touched it, and then develop it ourselves in a special machine.
Despite all these precautions, the experiments continued to produce the incredible images seen here.
They were able to achieve whole lengths of film, sometimes up to as much as 4 feet, with various words, symbols, messages, all sorts of different things on that film.
Other films contain poems in centuries-old German and fragments of Greek, Chinese, Hebrew, Latin, and even Sanskrit. The Skull Group were ordinary people with no knowledge of these languages. But did these films have a purpose? If dead personalities were producing these images, why did they apparently design some of them as complex puzzles?
Providing something which is a puzzle, which is difficult to solve, is simply because it is difficult to solve. It isn't readily available. It can't be easily attributable to the person sitting around the table.
Despite lengthy investigations, the possible authors of some of the films, like this German poem, proved impossible to trace. But others were easier to track down. This one contains a poem by Frederick Myers. Intriguingly, Myers was one of the founders of the SPR and a passionate researcher into the evidence for life after death. Before he died in 1901, he promised his colleagues at the SPR that he would try to communicate with them from the other side. Could this film actually represent evidence of the afterlife sent by one of its greatest investigators? Mostly the researchers were unclear as to who might have created these films. However, there were clues as to who the ghostly authors might be in the form of initials or signatures. For example, in this film, the signature appears to belong to the dead singer and actor Ivor Novello. This was received on one of the Skull films, compared to Novello's actual signature. Investigators say these images were created in total darkness. But how?
I think that those pictures can be explained only by imagining that the spirits can project their recollections and images onto a film in some way we can't begin to understand. The only alternative explanation is they are all fakes, but I don't believe that there's evidence that that is the case.
Although the mechanism mechanism for their creation remains a mystery, investigators concluded they were unique.
As far as the photographic evidence is concerned of skulls, strips of film, there has, in my view, never been anything like that at all, ever.
As far as I'm aware, I don't think there is any scientific evidence for archive today.
Spurred on by the photographic experiments, the Skoll Group began a series of video experiments called Project Alice, after Alice do the looking glass. Their ambition was nothing less than to try and capture moving images sent from the spirit world. The Skoll Group insists that instructions on how to position the camera and mirrors came from their spirit communicators. They were told to set up a video camera in the dark cellar, aim it at a pair of mirrors so that it could only film its own viewfinder. While it was recording, nothing unusual was seen. But when the tape was played back, these remarkable pictures appeared.
We had images on the video, sometimes of what looked like a tunnel of light. Other times spirit faces were coming towards us. Sometimes what appeared to be a doorway moving.
Skeptics claim these images were created by video feedback, occurring when a camera records its own output. But scientists have ruled this out. Video feedback doesn't produce this kind of result. As to what these extraordinary